What's up, guys? So today we're working on this '06 Yamaha Grizzly 125. This one had a ticking in the transmission, so I did have to pull the motor, which isn't that bad. I didn't even have to take any plastics off, just this footwell. You just push this forward and it'll give you enough room. I had to take off one mounting bracket and you can slide it out this way. So I already have it apart. It's over here on the bench. So I'm just going to record putting it back together and hopefully you find something useful in there. I looked up online and it seems like they use this motor for every Grizzly 125 year and for every Yamaha Breeze all the way back to '89. So no matter what year, Breeze or Grizzly 125 you have, everything should look pretty much the same on the motor, I think. Unfortunately, on these you do have to take off the top end in order to get to the transmission. Is it a terrible design? Yes. Was it the worst thing to take apart? No. So it's not that bad. It's just kind of unneeded for them to make this one solid case instead of splitting it right here. But anyways, let me show you what went wrong with mine. It was actually this main axle in the transmission, and just one tooth there broke off. Luckily that was the only damage. I actually found the tooth in the bottom of the case, so sitting here somewhere. Luckily that didn't get caught in any of these gears. All the teeth are fine. I went over them. If you have to open it up, make sure to go over them all and double check there's no damage you're missing. So that main axle, actually, I could show you what the back of this looks like, and this goes right in here. And if I rotate the sprocket, let me see, that's what I was hearing. So right where that tooth goes in. So yeah, we ordered up another one of those. It was 130 bucks. And I had to take off all the gears from the axles. So I'll show you how I did that and how to put them back on. Okay, so we got our new one here. And the order that this came off, there goes one, was washer right there. And then this gear, and then this thicker washer, and a clip. So I got this clip ready. Alright, and just make sure that goes all the way in. You could hear it click in. And then, let's see, your dog on there, like that. And then this washer. Okay. Gear. And your last washer. And there's a spacer that holds everything on. We're just going to tap that back on with a socket. Okay, so I have a 15mm socket. And just lightly should slide right on. And you actually don't want to seat it all the way down. There's supposed to be a hair of room so this gear can still spin freely. So I'm just going to go a little farther. There. So you can just wiggle it back and forth, but that still spins. Okay, and the way I got this off, because there's no real room, there's probably plenty of ways, but what I did, just take this dog, slide it in so you have room here, and I actually had a puller like this, and there was enough room to just kind of grab onto that, and then, you know, you just screw this into the center, and it kind of pulled all that off. So that's how I did it. There might be other ways, but it came off pretty easy. And also I forgot to mention, because you have to take off the top end, you do have to get the flywheel off, and I used this same puller. I didn't have the right puller for this. You're actually supposed to have one that 3 bolts thread in to these spots, and I just didn't have it. So I had this one laying around, and there was actually enough room to get it in right behind the flywheel and grab on, and then it, you know, cranked this down and it came right off. So that was useful. That's how I did it. So before I can't get in here, I'm gonna put assembly lube on these bearings before they get covered up. Okay. Alright, so just make sure that's all lubed up. First thing you're going to want to put in is this guy. Up top, should slide right in. Then this. And before I put this in, I'll show you how the shift fork goes. You need to make sure that it's in that groove there. So you won't be able to see it once I put it in. But this should just slide right in. There you go, just like that. So there you're in neutral. And then your shift fork will go in, and you're gonna wanna make sure that this guide, here's your shift cam, will go in right to the middle spot here. So that's neutral. So get that in. All right. And also, before I put this in, these grooves on the bottom, there's a ball bearing right here that sits on this spring, which I'm not sure if you could see it really, but so there's a bolt on the bottom and then a spring that sits in here, and this ball bearing sits on this spring. And when you put this back together, you're going to want to make sure that it sits in this middle spot, which is also neutral, and that just holds the gear lever in place and gives it some resistance so it doesn't go flopping around. So I'm going to try to do all that here. Okay, so that is in the neutral position. Now I'm going to try to get to the bottom of this and unscrew that bolt. Okay, so here's your bolt. You see the spring in there, and this will sit in there like that. Okay, so that's locked in. See, now it provides that resistance. And then lastly, I'm going to slide this shaft in, and I'll see if I could show you. See that dot on there? That dot has to line up on the shift cam. It's hard to show. There's 2 dots. So right there, it has to line up and go in between those 2 dots. So as long as you have all that lined up, check you're in neutral, ball in the center, guide in the center, dots lined up, you should be in good shape. Okay, so that really is it for the transmission. I'm going to cover all this in assembly lube before I put it back together. And also make sure all the old gasket material is off and really clean this. I used a just flat razor blade to scrape, and then just cleaned it with a rag. So I'm going to cover all this in RTV and put them back together. Other things to check while you're in here is just make sure all your bearings rotate smooth. Put assembly lube on those too. Your crank bearing. Make sure your rod bearing is solid, a little side to side, but up and down should be no play. And that everything just looks good. One thing to look out for is this timing chain can fall off the teeth down there on the crank, and if you're not paying attention and it does that, the crank can actually back out a hair, and then when you go to put the cases back together, it'll smash that timing chain if it's not on the teeth. So just double check that. And I think that's really it. The cases should go back together pretty smooth. Just use a rubber mallet to tap them in. Make sure all your bolts are in the right spots. This has Phillips head bolts, and half of mine were on the verge of stripping out when I was taking them out. So I used a impact driver with a hammer, and that took them out without stripping it. So you might need that too. I think that's it. I hope this video is helpful. For as long as this motor's been around, there really isn't a lot of information on it, and there's definitely not a lot of videos, so I figured I'd just record me putting it back together, and I hope it helps some of you. If you like this, make sure to subscribe. I'm working on these wheelers all the time. I'm doing it full time now. I actually quit my job 6-ish months ago, and I figured since I'm repairing so many of them now, I'll start recording some of the more interesting stuff. So make sure to subscribe and let me know what you think or if you like this video. Alright guys, thanks.